Bitcoin is never going to work and it's going to be banned. Well, at least that's a common objection that I hear all the time. But in this video, I'm going to explain why Bitcoin cannot be banned. I'm going to tell you why banning it would only validate its existence, how it would make it even more valuable, and the only way that you need to proceed from here. So stay tuned. All right, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mark Moss. I like to talk about making money, personal finance, investing, money, success. I talk about cryptocurrencies a lot because, well, I believe they're the single best investment opportunity that we'll ever see. Now, I'm following up on a series that I've been doing on Bitcoin. I made a video, I'll link to it up here. It's about how Bitcoin got to $100,000 or how it can get to $100,000. Got a lot of views, got a lot of comments, and I get statements, not really, comments about, well, that's not true because this is always going to happen. Well, that's not true because this is always going to happen. And so what I did is I took a couple of the very top comments and I'm making videos to address each one of those. And so this is following up on that series. A lot of common misconceptions, a lot of false beliefs. Now, if you like this series, if you like Bitcoin, the series, make sure you're smashing that like button down below. Subscribe, ring the bell so you can get the rest of the series as I put them through. And then if you really, really want to help, is share the video with someone else who you think could use it. All right, now, another really big misconception that I hear all the time is that Bitcoin will be banned. Right? The governments are going to outlaw it. It's going to be illegal. You won't be able to use it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I want to say up front that this video was inspired from a paper written by Parker Lewis, and I'm going to put the link in the description so you can read the full paper that he wrote up because it was amazing. It was really good, and I recommend it to everybody. So to jump into this, to really understand this whole thing about Bitcoin being banned, we have to start kind of at the beginning. And so the first thing we have to do is we have to kind of know and understand what Bitcoin is and what it's doing. And so it's kind of creating this alternative financial system. And I'm not going into all that in this video specifically. I have plenty of other videos. If you want to scroll to the video selection, you can see those. But you have to understand, or at least that we understand, that Bitcoin is creating this alternative financial system. It's allowing us to opt out, peacefully opt out. And so what it's doing is it's going to have to coexist alongside all these other government monies. And so each government basically wants to create their own money. I mean, who wouldn't, right? If we can create our own money from scratch. And so each country has their own central bank, has their own money creation, and Bitcoin is not owned by a central bank. It's not owned by a central entity. So it's this alternative system that's going to have to coexist alongside all these government monies. But the question is, if it's left alone, if it could be left alone to operate like in a free market where people are free to choose it and use it, could Bitcoin be a better form of money? Now, that's the question. So in order to answer that question, we have to actually step back. You know, I love to go back in history a little bit and look at the bigger picture here. So really to understand this, we have to look at what is money. And so the question is, what is money? And really we have to look at what are the properties that make money, or what are the properties that make one money better money than other? If you go back through thousands of years, gold has been the dominant form of money, but we've seen lots of other types of money, from feathers to shells, glass beads, etc., rocks. And so some of the things that make money better, the properties of money, are that it's durable. It needs to be able to last. We couldn't use a banana as money because within a couple of days it's rotten, right? A flower couldn't be used as money because within a few days it's wilted. Of course, tell those guys from the tulip bubble. But we want money to be durable because we need to be able to store our value over time, throughout time. It also needs to be divisible. Like, that's one reason why bartering didn't work really well, like a cow, because a cow is too big. What if I wanted something really small? And so it needs to be divisible. It also needs to be acceptable. That would be called saleability. We have to make sure that there's enough people that it can accept it. If there's only one other person on the planet that wants what I have, it's not going to be a good form of money. So we need it to be liquid. It needs to be acceptable everywhere. It also needs to be uniform. And so that means that it needs to be the same every single time. That's also called fungibility. It needs to be in limited supply. If it's everywhere and everybody can go find it everywhere, it's not going to be a good form of money. The scarcity, the limited supply, is also what makes it good. And then it needs to be portable. Right? That was why gold and silver were used together so well, because gold was really used for big transactions and silver was used for microtransactions. That changed. Of course, I made a video about that. I'll link it here. That silver is not what you think it is, because that changed. But money needs to be portable. And so if you understand Bitcoin a little bit, I would ask you then, does Bitcoin have any of these properties? based off of these criteria that I've given you, do you think Bitcoin is better or worse? Does Bitcoin have a more limited supply than other types of money? Is Bitcoin more portable than other types of money, right? Think about that. So now that we've taken the time to kind of go back and look at what money is or the characteristics of money, we want to go back to the original question at hand, and that is that will the governments try to outlaw it? Will they try to ban it? Will they try to make it illegal? Will they try to stop it? And the first thing that we have to understand is that if the governments want to ban it, that tells you that it's working. So if you're already asking that question, you've already admitted to yourself that Bitcoin is working. If Bitcoin doesn't work, then the government doesn't care, right? If it's not a good form of money, if it's not a good place to store our value, then why would the government care enough to ban it? So stating that the government would be banning it in the first place admits that it's functional as money, that it's even a better money, right? Because it's going to have to compete. Like I said, it's going to be in alongside the system. It's going to have to compete. And so if you're worried about banning it, you're worried about it actually outcompeting, because if there was no threat, there wouldn't be any bannings. Make sense? So the other thing that we have to keep in mind, though, is that we're admitting that it is a functional money. It's actually going to be able to outcompete the government money, and that the government would want to ban it, right? But here's the thing: Bitcoin exists beyond the government. It exists beyond borders. It's beyond the reach of any centralized parties. It's decentralized completely globally, right? And because of the core features that Bitcoin was built around, being open, borderless, permissionless, etc., it becomes more and more decentralized. It's open, so anybody can just join into it. It's borderless anywhere in the world. It's permissionless. I don't need to get permission to join the network. Even to join, Google, you have to put in a phone number and an email address or whatever, right? So it's permissionless, openless, borderless, and because of that, it's scaling decentralized all around the world. And the bigger it becomes, the harder it becomes to censor the network. Make sense? Bitcoin was designed to be immutable. It was designed to be censorship resistant. It was designed to be immune from this government intervention. Now, that's not to say there won't be a fight. So now we're admitting that it could compete in an open market against money. We could understand why the government might want to ban it, but it's going to be almost impossible because of the global decentralized level. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be a fight. We understand that the government is always going to want theirs, right? They want the ability to create money. Like I said, who wouldn't? If you can create your own money, I'm sure you'd want to as well. And so they're going to want to, and they don't want to lose that. The money is power. And so we do understand that there's going to be a war like we've never seen, right? They're gonna try to regulate it. They're gonna try to tax it, and some countries are even gonna ban it. As a matter of fact, some countries have. Some of the smaller countries. When I'm talking about the government's ban, I'm really talking about more of the developed countries, the United States, European countries, etc. But they're gonna try, right? Regulate it, tax it, try to ban it. They don't want to lose this monopoly to create money. But the question is, can it be banned? So let's kind of play this out. Like, how would that work? So if the government, like again, the developed governments, if they try to ban it, that would mean that they're feeling threatened. And right now today, Bitcoin is pretty small. And this is one of the beauties about Bitcoin. And I made another video about Bitcoin. I'll link to it here, that Bitcoin can't be copied. And what I meant was that the code could be copied, but the Bitcoin network couldn't be. And a new one would never succeed because it would be seen as an instant threat and it'd be attacked. But Bitcoin was left alone and was allowed to grow until it was big enough to now defend itself. But even at that, today the network is tiny. I mean, it's about 130 billion today, and it's tiny. I mean, gold is $8 trillion, so it's like 40 times the size of Bitcoin. US dollars is about $15 trillion, so it's like 75 times the size of Bitcoin. And so the government doesn't feel threatened about this right now. So even though they see, well, it has potential and maybe one day, sure, it could be a problem, they're not really feeling threatened by that. We've seen that multiple times through comments by the president, Donald Trump, and through the Secretary of Treasury, Mnuchin, and so forth. And they're not really feeling threatened. So then the question is, when? When will they feel threatened? Are they going to feel threatened when Bitcoin hits 2 trillion? Are they going to feel threatened when Bitcoin hits 5 trillion? Is that going to be big enough for them to worry about it? We don't know the answer. But the thing is, if it's left alone to even grow to 2 trillion, 3 trillion, 5 trillion, the longer that they wait, the harder it's going to get. Because as the more the value grows, the more users jump into it. The more users jump in, the more decentralized it gets, the more hash power goes onto it, which is the security, and more importantly, the more perceived value that it has. And the more people that get in, the more decentralized, more secure, more perceived value, the harder and harder it is going to be for the governments to ban this. And I mean, and like I said before, the fact is that the government's trying to ban it only proves its usefulness. So it's like its own marketing. So as the governments are trying to stop it, they're marketing saying that it's really good and you should be using it, right? And if you think about it, the internet has really changed the world and the way that we think about things. And today we have all this awareness and this information that we didn't have. And when you think about it, like how can they take away like a human right for us to convert our time into money? So for example, right, like I should be free to convert my time, my labor into anything I want. So for example, I should be able to come and paint your house and you could give me an item of yours like your laptop. Or I could come dig a hole for you and then maybe you would fix my car, right? So I should be able to use my labor how I want, right? So my labor allows me to work today, and then I should be able to get paid, which stores the value, and then I can use my labor later. So I can work an extra 8 hours today, get paid for the 8 hours, and then store and save that 8 hours and pay that later. And I should be free to convert my labor into anything I want. I can convert my labor into a car. I could do side jobs at your house and you give me an old car. Maybe I can earn a house. Maybe it's just a little bit of labor and I get a meal out of it. Maybe I decide I don't want a meal or a car, I want dollars. Maybe I want Bitcoin, but shouldn't I be free to convert my labor into whatever I choose? So the government says, nope, you're not allowed to get a meal for your labor. Nope, you're not allowed to exchange services. You're not allowed, like, they're going to tell you that you can't convert your labor. And so that's essentially what they're trying to say when someone says they're going to ban Bitcoin, is they're not going to allow you to convert your labor into anything that you want. And one of the great Austrian economists, Nobel Peace Prize winner, I've quoted him many times before, F.A. Hayek, he said that money is one of the greatest instruments of freedom ever invented by man. The greatest instruments of freedom ever invented by man. He said it's money which in existing society opens an astounding range of choice to the poor man, a range greater than that which not many generations ago was open only to the wealthy. And so this money that we can earn, that we can store, that we can save, that we can spend is what allows us as a society to grow, to flourish, to prosper. That's what he's saying. And so when the government if they were to ban it and say you're not free to convert your labor into anything that you want, well, then what does that tell us about the government, right? That tells us that's even more reason why we need it. So that's why the government can't successfully ban Bitcoin. And as a matter of fact, the government can't successfully ban anything. I mean, if we take a look at this throughout history, what does history tell us? It tells us at best the government can marginally restrict access. And a lot of times by restricting access only makes it wanted or even more, right? If we look at like the alcohol prohibition, we saw how well that worked. There was all types of alcohol that continued to flourish throughout the prohibition, and finally they just had to make it legal again. We look at drugs, which drugs for the most part weren't even really illegal till the 70s, and then through the war on drugs, they've gotten so popular, and now there are trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars of drugs. And they can't even keep drugs out of prisons. Think about that. Prison's the most secure place in the world, and they can't even keep a drug out of the prison. And a drug, think about it like whether it's a marijuana plant or cocaine. I mean, you have to grow a plant, you have to process it, you have to package it, you have to ship it, people have to carry it, people are involved, all those things. And yet they can't even stop that. They can't even keep the transportation out of a prison. Right? Think about that. Gold, they made gold illegal back in 1933. They went and confiscated it, made it illegal to own, but it didn't take away the value of gold. As a matter of fact, the value of gold only increased compared to dollars after they made it illegal. And so history shows us what can happen. And like I said, if they can't even stop drugs, something physical, how could they stop Bitcoin that's completely digital, completely global, borderless? I mean, it's invisible, it's silent. How could they stop that, right? They can't. And then think about even like a bigger problem. So imagine like trying to get all the governments of the world together to work together. Imagine trying to get them all together to agree on anything, on one thing, right? It's never happened before. They can't do it. And even if they did, like I said, it would signal the failure of their own fiat money system. So basically, any government that's trying to ban it is basically recognizing that our money is worthless, and they're just telling you that. And so it proves Bitcoin's value and worth. And because it's so decentralized, there's no single point of failure. So it's not like the government can go shut down these servers or shut down these banks or arrest this person. There's no single point of failure. We have all the miners across the world. And I know one question we're going to get is that China does have about 63% of the miners today. So if the entire country of China could move on all the miners at one time and take them over, that could be problematic. I believe over the next year, we're going to see that number drop below 50%. So that's definitely going to help out. But it's not just the miners, it's also the nodes. And the nodes are much more decentralized throughout the world. And if you're concerned about the Bitcoin safety and security, you could run a node. You can buy one for $100, $200, plug it in the Wi-Fi at your house, and you can help secure the Bitcoin network throughout the world. Now, the other thing about Bitcoin, it's difficult to understand because there's so many different things you have to understand about it. One of the things about Bitcoin is it's built on game theory. And game theory with Bitcoin is pretty cool. And basically what we're talking about specifically here is that as countries impose capital control laws, what they're doing is they're saying, we want all the capital to stay here in our country. You can't take it out of the country. But what happens? Well, the people want to get it out of the country then, right? Because money wants to be free. And so what happens is as soon as they put capital control laws, well, all of a sudden capital starts outflowing out of the country. We can see this in China. And if you've been to like Vancouver, San Francisco, New York, you've seen the real estate being driven up like crazy from the Chinese people because the Chinese people are doing anything they can to get their money out of the country because of capital control laws. And so what happens is if a country were to ban Bitcoin or other types of money, all of a sudden it's going to cause people to want to get money out of there. And what's going to happen is it's going to create this game theory where one country says, okay, we're going to ban it, but the other country says, well, we're going to allow it. And what would happen is we'll start to see money shift from the country that makes it illegal to the countries that allow it. And that's where the game theory plays in. And we already can see this playing out. So for example, in California, we have a great representative, Brad Sherman, and he came out and said to Congress specifically that we can't allow Bitcoin to threaten the U.S. dollar because if the U.S. dollar is the world reserve currency, and if the U.S. reserve currency is lost, we lose the ability to slap sanctions on countries like Iran. He said that specifically, like Iran. But what do you think Iran was thinking? Iran's like, so you're saying that if Bitcoin takes off, then the U.S. can't slap sanctions on us anymore? I think they like that. I think all the countries around the world are starting to like that. They don't want to have sanctions slapped on them. And so because the U.S. has the world reserve currency, but the other countries don't, there's going to be this game theory where they're going to want to see it adopted. And so that's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. So how are we going to play it out? How are we going to play this? More importantly, play to win, I guess. And really that's what I'd like to see all the countries do, especially the United States. I'd like to see them play to win and understand that banning Bitcoin is not going to work. After Mark Zuckerberg went before Congress and there was all these different hearings on Libra, et cetera, there was a lot of regulators and lawmakers that were testifying that were pretty switched on. I was surprised how smart some of these guys were to it. And they said like, hey, we're either going to jump on this and profit or we're going to fall behind. And they got that. And so I'd love to see the U.S. really get behind this, understand that banning Bitcoin isn't going to work. Countries are going to try, they're going to continue to fail, but banning is only going to prove the reason why we need it. It's only going to increase awareness and adoption. And again, the more adoption makes it stronger, more useful. It's kind of like this flywheel where it picks up steam and it starts growing. So really, the only winning move is to play. That's it. You got to play. So hopefully that makes sense. That's why banning Bitcoin is not going to work. If you like this series, make sure to give me some thumbs up, smash that like button, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and let me know what else you think I have wrong. Let me know what other things you think are wrong about Bitcoin, and I'll knock them down one by one in the videos. And that's it. To your success. I'm out.